How many planets are in your solar system? The everyman on the street probably doesn't think about it much and says whatever number they were told in school. But you're watching this video, which suggests you have some stronger opinions.
I want to spend the rest of my life making you the center of my universe. A universe that contains a solar system with 9 planets.
That's definitely some passion, buddy.
Did you hear about Pluto? It's messed up, right?
Oh, it is. It is. So today, we're going to answer what exactly happened to Pluto. At the time of recording, I'm 40 mumble years old, which means that Pluto was a planet for more than half my life. Well, that's a weird way to start things off. Well, if you're also 40 mumble, or older, brace yourself. It's almost, or depending on when you watch this, perhaps already, 20 years since the IAU took away Pluto's planetary status. August 24th, 2006. A date that will stay pretty esoteric, except to general knowledge YouTubers and maybe diehard lovers and haters of the ninth planet. So, what happened on that date? The International Astronomical Union, or IAU, offered to its members in a General Assembly Resolution 5A, which says 1. A planet is a celestial body that A. is in orbit around the Sun, B. has sufficient mass for its self-gravity to overcome rigid body forces so that it assumes a hydrostatic equilibrium, a nearly round, shape, and C. has cleared the neighborhood around its orbit. Let's see how Pluto stacks up. Does it orbit around the Sun? Yes. Is it nearly round? Well, the New Horizons spacecraft took this picture of it from about 22,000 miles away, or 35 megameters in everywhere else units, and it seems to be pretty round. Has it cleared the neighborhood around its orbit? Not so much. Pluto's located in the Kuiper Belt, which means it's sharing space with lots of little solar system buddies. Or bodies, if you want to get technical. While Pluto is the largest object in the Kuiper Belt, at 0.2% as massive as Earth, it makes up somewhere between 2% and 10% of the total mass of the whole of the Kuiper Belt. Compare that to Mars, which is about 99.98% of the mass in its orbital zone. Part C has its dissenters, of course. Jupiter shares an orbit with perhaps 1 million asteroids in its L4 and L5 Lagrange points, known as the Trojan asteroids. That argument has the counter-argument that the Trojans are stuck in Jupiter's orbit because Jupiter put them there. And of course, while there are maybe 1 million asteroids and only one Jupiter, Jupiter is 99.9998% of the mass in its orbital zone. That's a 5 nines rating, almost 6 nines. Part B has maybe even more dissenters. Now, yes, if we're focusing only on Pluto here, we wouldn't talk about Part B, since Pluto conforms. But guess what doesn't? No, not Earth. That'd be absurd. Yes, Mercury. At least a paper from Harvard in 2015 says the shape of Mercury, and then some things like geoid and equatorial difference and spectral density. And then the précis ends with implying that Mercury is not in hydrostatic equilibrium. Pluto fans often lean on this point to say that the IAU doesn't actually care about their definition. They just wanted to demote Pluto. To make an extreme comparison, it's like the IAU created the apartheid rules, but because they really like Eartha Kitt, I mean, Mercury, they granted her honorary white status. I mean, is a planet. Anyways. For what it's worth, though, I think they get to ignore the hydrostatic equilibrium requirement because Resolution 5A includes a clarifying, though perhaps actually defining, note. The 8 planets are Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. So, Mercury is a planet because Mercury is a planet. and Pluto isn't because it isn't. And I guess I should point out that even Part A has its dissent. Whether they just like to heckle or actually have an interesting point to make, there are people who argue that moons like Titan should really be treated like planets. I'll go ahead and venture an opinion of my own here and say that I prefer the hierarchical model, where a moon orbits a planet and a planet orbits a star. Now, that hierarchy also doesn't super fare well for Pluto. Charon doesn't so much orbit Pluto as they orbit each other. Yes, that is also true for Earth and Luna, but for Pluto and Charon, the so-called barycenter of their orbit lies outside of Pluto. There is a camp that thinks there's a better contender for ninth planet status.
I hate to correct you, but Pluto's way over there.
Why would I be pointing it at Pluto?
Because you're showing me the ninth planet.
Yes, I'm showing you Eris.
Eris is stupid.
No, sorry, Gus is right. Eris is stupid. I mean, yes, it's 27% more massive than Pluto, and it's probably swept more of its orbit, but Pluto's about 7% physically larger, and has a much less wonky orbit. Plus, there's always... Tradition! Yeah, it would just be too much of a gut punch to accept Eris without Pluto. I actually mean Ceres. Ceres is the largest object in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, making it analogous to Pluto, but with the main asteroid belt instead of the Kuiper belt. Ceres is massive enough that despite being in the asteroid belt, it's almost 25% of the mass of its orbital zone. Its orbit is fairly circular, and it's at least in the plane of the ecliptic. No, it isn't. It's about 10 degrees out. Okay, so Pluto's out by 17, but Eris is out by 44. Side note, if you're really into astronomy, you might already be objecting that the plane of the ecliptic is arbitrary and geocentric, and that I should really be using the invariable plane. Well, sure. You know what the invariable plane is, and I know what the invariable plane is, but most people don't know what the invariable plane is. Plus, I couldn't find a corroborated value for Eris's inclination to the invariable plane, and while I came up with 43.3 degrees, that's a bit too close to the plane of the ecliptic's 44 degrees for my taste, so I didn't trust it. If you want things done in terms of the invariable plane, publish more tables. You didn't, so you don't, so there. Oh, and while you're at it, decide if we should be caring about the invariable plane or the proper inclination, and yes, I know they're different. Right. Where was I? Ceres. Okay, so Ceres has done a better job of sweeping its orbit, but Pluto's about 14 times as massive as Ceres, and it has about 16 times the volume. So I'm voting for Pluto over Ceres, too. Before coming up with their final Pluto demoting proposal, the IAU was internally looking at three options. First, a planet is an object in orbit of the Sun with a diameter greater than 2,000 kilometers. That would put the cutoff between Haumea at about 1,540 and Eris at 2,320. So Eris and Pluto, yes. Ceres, no. 2. An object in orbit of the Sun with a shape that's stable by gravity. Pluto, yes. Mercury, yes, because they didn't use the words hydrostatic equilibrium. And Eris and Ceres, yes. And third, an object in the orbit of the Sun and dominant in its orbit. Well, now we have to define dominant. If it's merely the biggest object, then yes to all three. And if it means more than half the mass, then no to all three. Even though the diameter proposal was the leading internal candidate, what they ended up pushing was a combination of 2 and 3. I'm again feeling some direct Pluto hate. You can probably guess that I'm more in favor of the diameter proposal. Though, if they make it an aesthetically pleasing 2,345 kilometer cutoff, then they'd get to keep Pluto in and keep Eris out. Under the IAU's new rule for what makes something a planet, if you meet rules A and B but not C, you get to be a dwarf planet. But this created a terminology problem for the IAU. See, there are 3 celestial dwarfs. Dwarf galaxies are galaxies. Dwarf stars are stars. but dwarf planets are emphatically not planets. Yay! Consistency! 2 bonus facts. First, the New Horizons space probe in 2015 found that Pluto has tectonic activity. That sounds like a planet thing to me, and apparently to a bunch of geophysics-based astronomers. And second, Pluto has an orbit of about 248 years. So, if you accept the IAU demotion in 2006, Pluto the planet only had 76 years of existence, meaning Pluto the planet only ever completed 30.6% of a single orbit before being demoted. So, there you have it. The IAU made a rule for what they consider to be a planet. Pluto doesn't achieve criterion C, clearing its orbit, and so it got demoted to the new category of dwarf planet 20 years ago. And a lot of people think they got it wrong. What do you think? Do you accept Pluto's demotion? Should the IAU be forced to drop us from 8 to 7 because of Mercury's shortcomings? Should Eris be a planet?
Eris is stupid.
Ceres? Leave a comment and let the rest of the universe know how you feel. See you next time for another simple question and simple response.